All right. Good morning, everybody. Very happy to be joined up here with some incredibly influential people. Now, Law & Order has officially come to Toronto, and I know everybody was extremely excited when that was announced. So, Amy, I'll start with you. How was Toronto chosen to be included in this iconic franchise to begin with, and what was the process like going into choosing it?
Well, the whole thing started actually with Lark. And Tex is here representing Lark, so he might be able to answer, he might be able to get into how it sort of started with Lark. But I think this is something that certainly was something City TV was interested, Rogers was interested in pursuing for a while. There, I think, have been a number of conversations that have been happening for years about this particular format. And Toronto is an incredibly important market for City TV, and so this was always sort of the idea of bringing it to Toronto, I believe, was from the get-go. Is that correct? I flippantly say that no one wanted a Law & Order Vancouver, which is kind of mean for me to say that, but...
We tried. Didn't go.
You tried to do Vancouver? Yeah, sorry. And then it came to, I had worked with Erin Haskett at Lark I was a production executive when I was at CBC on one of her shows in development. And then we had a wonderful conversation in the women's washroom at Banff, which don't discount bathroom conversations, because then, then I stayed in touch, and she called and she said, would you be interested in producing this in Toronto? And it was a no-brainer to say yes, because not only is the franchise so exciting, but it also gave us a chance to really highlight this amazing city and sort of give it the proper Canadian stamp on a Law & Order franchise.
Wow. Now staying on that theme, Tex, what was the challenges that you faced in bringing it and adopting such a globally renowned franchise?
Yeah, I guess first and foremost, we had to deliver a show that would fit within City TV's Law & Order time slot, or their Thursday night. And naturally, we knew that audiences were going to compare our Canadian series to the US series. So it was paramount for us to deliver on production value and cost out the show that would allow for a seamless integration. But there was also an element that we needed to market the show at a comparable level. And I have to give Rogers kudos in that they led a massive marketing campaign that engaged audiences early, that created a huge amount of buzz leading up to the premiere.
They kept Karen hopping for a solid 2 to 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah, they did. But I enjoyed it.
And when the when the audience showed up, when the show premiered, it clicked. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I believe more people were showing up and watching the Canadian series over the US counterparts. Wow. So that's a massive achievement, and that was an overall huge success from every level: production, cast, marketing, broadcaster. Everyone, stars were aligned, and it worked. Another challenging aspect was the script writing. We had a very short runway from when season 1 was greenlit to when we needed to have 10 production-ready drafts ready to go to camera. And that's not easy in a season 1. I should also mention, this is the first time that the Law & Order franchise has actually, an adaptation of the Law & Order franchise has wholly original scripts. So in other markets, they've redone produced scripts. We are ground up, wholly original, and that is not easy to do, but Tassie nailed it with the pilot. And I think she set up her amazing team with success because it provided our partners at Universal and Wolf with a lot of comfort and assurance that we were treating their prized format with care and heading in the right direction.
Now, Karen, what was your first reaction to finding out that you were going to get the lead role in this incredible series?
Well, first of all, I would say that I'm one of the leads. I am not the lead because I work with some amazing colleagues. So, and you know them because I'm assuming you've watched the show. What was my reaction? Well, I was in the middle of renovating my house. And I was facing significant cost overruns. And so when this came down the pipe, that was, besides the fact that when I heard it announced, my reaction was, this is the baddest, bossiest move. I think I texted you, Amy, and I said, this is the bossiest move ever. Of course, Toronto should have its own Law and Order. So I already had that, churning around in my head. And then when I found out that, I was going to be in it, all I saw were dollar signs because I could pay for my renovation. And then I went, oh my God, I'm in Law and Order. I'm in Law and Order. And can I tell you, all this time later, over a year later, every now and again, I stop myself and I go, I'm in Law and Order. So that was my response.
Do you ever look at your innovations and go, Law and Order, Law and Order, Law and Order?
Every morning when I see that light streaming through my skylight, yeah.
And I just need to say, so Tassie, who's my sister and who is the showrunner on the show, the only role that she had cast in her mind, she's very careful not to cast too early in her brain because she never wants to be disappointed. But the only role that she had firmly cast in her brain was Karen's as Inspector Holness, who other tidbit, Inspector Holness is named in honor of Sudz's wife, Jennifer Holness.
Yay. Now, great transition to Sudz. So you obviously film in incredible locations around Toronto, but what is your choice and how do you go about picking these locations and what has been your favorite so far?
I think before I talk about locations, it's a blessing to work with actors like this and actors of this caliber and the guest stars we get in, because just like working in Toronto is amazing because I get to work at home. Most of my work is like, Atlanta, Vancouver, New York, like it's like ridiculous. So, but actually filming in Toronto is amazing. But working with actors of this caliber in these spaces is great too, because we can, people have drinking games like, and every time they recognize a street, they drink or whatever like that. So,
Not on set.
Not on set. There's people viewing at home.
Only while you're watching.
There's viewing at home. This is what my parents tell me. No. But working with actors of this caliber, taking these stories, and these are Canadian stories. These are like from not just Toronto, but all across the country. Working with them to sort of give life to these stories is amazing. My favorite place was the Rogers Center. We shot in the Rogers Center. We just shot in the Rogers Center. I just did the director's cut for that just last night. So working in the Rogers Center, being on the field, that was ridiculous. Everybody's taking pictures. Everybody had their Blue Jays paraphernalia on. You can't walk on the logo, by the way.
It's against sports culture.
Do not ever walk on a logo ever. But just to be in spaces like that is like, this is your city. This is our city. And to have because how many people get to walk on the field unless they're players? How many people get to walk on a field, on the field, that level, and have that whole environment to play in for an entire day? That was crazy. And so that was like a dream come true. I even had my cousin as one of the extras, it was like, because he's a Blue Jays fanatic. You know what I mean? But that's the thing about like having a hometown crew, enjoying and just sort of living and telling stories about this city is great.
Now, just on that theme, Amy, how do you go about choosing these real life stories and picking the best ones or the ones at the right time?
Well, you're in luck because I asked my sister, who runs the room, as I said. the first season we were focused on Toronto crime. So we really, and we were also focused on downtown Toronto. So we were really trying to establish the world of Law and Order Toronto and make it very much about Toronto, even to the extent of picking the crime stories that we were going to use as inspiration. This second and third seasons that we're shooting right now, we've opened that up. So we've opened up the downtown core. We are going further afield in terms of our locations, but we're also going further afield in terms of crime, though it's all Canadian crime. We're not going beyond our borders. Fortunately, unfortunately for Canadians, we got a lot of crime. And we've got a lot of stories to pick from. When I was asking Tassie, I read the paper every day. I will flip her stories and I send stuff saying, this is fascinating and look at this story. I mean, the story about the snowboarder who's now a criminal mastermind, fascinating. So that, things like that, I'll flip to her she's got a lot of friends who do the same. All the writers in the writer's room are always scanning for stories. But what they're looking for, and we don't base the stories, the episodes on the actual, we're inspired by the crime, so we always try to take it in a different direction. Otherwise it would get boring, I think, for viewers to know what happened. But they look for something that they call sticky in the story. So something that sort of sticks with you. There's a location, or there's a motive, or there is a suspect, or there's something about it that is a sticky piece of information, and that is what they sort of grab as their inspiration to then build the stories. And they often do try to marry 2 to 3 different crime stories or different stories that are. So last year in the first season, for example, we had the crack mayor story. That was, but there were other elements of other crime that we folded into that story, other crimes that had inspired other parts of that episode.
Now, going back to season 1, Tex, did you think that there'd be a season 2 and 3, or was that the automatic process that you were going for when scripting for season 1?
Well, I suppose with the level of investment that Rogers was making, given that it's a global franchise, it has, I think we all had aspirations that this would be multiple seasons. I think coming off of season 1 and the success that it had, we were fairly confident we'd be getting a season 2 order. Now, with season 3, it was actually after season 2 was greenlit that our international distribution partner suggested that we cost out a season 3, because multiple episodes, there's cost efficiencies that are involved. We knew that we had a hit. What does it cost? What can we find? So we went through that exercise, and it made a lot of sense for all partners that we would proceed with a multiple season order. Yeah, I think, in today's marketplace, it's quite vital for producers to find cost-effective solutions to encourage a show's longevity and success, and that was a way that we could do it, was with encouraging multiple seasons.
That's awesome. Now, Sudz, from season 1 to now season 2 and 3, what are some of the challenges and some of the stuff you've overcome from filming from season 1 to now 2 and 3?
I think the scripts are getting more ambitious, and that's but they're also finding their way, because this is a format that the evolution of as these scripts get more complex and tighter, and you've also got a bunch of story in the past, and you're building up some lore with your characters. You can go into the past, for example, with your characters, which is great. Into their own past. And this is not giving anything away, but I had a chance to do an episode with Karen that went into the character of Vivian Holness's past, which is great and evocative, and you can see, you've got some fantastic actors, and you're really testing them. And so you're seeing that in this particular version of the format, your actors are being tested in a different way. They're not just strictly, because some of the Law and Order, the other Law and Orders are very kind of straightforward. This is a little different. Your characters have, some backstory, and so those things play out. So you're getting deeper with that, You're having a great sort of, bunch of guest stars coming in, and everybody's level is raising. So I think that scripts are getting more ambitious, we're getting deeper, and we're telling really amazing stories. And I think we're getting a little braver, I think, with what we're trying to do. And we're trying to tell the diverse story of this diverse city. And that's a great thing to see, that kind of representation on screen.
Karen, how do you go about preparing for this role? Originally, from when you got the call, has it changed between then and now, or what's your day-to-day look like in preparation?
I don't think it's changed. I mean, I think I prepared for this role pretty much the way I prepare for any role. It's what the role demands, and with this particular role, I can harken back to the first time I saw Esapatha Murkison in the original Law and Order, and since then I have had so many depictions of. Well, actually, you know what? Let me take that back. I have paid attention to the depictions of women in leadership roles that I've seen on TV, and I also have those women in my life. So that feeds me. With this particular part, besides that, I also find that, it's when I get the scripts, when I see the costumes, when we decide on the wigs, my name, for instance, the fact that the last name comes from one of the luminaries of our film and TV industry here in Toronto, in Jennifer Holness, and then my first name is actually my sister's middle name. They allowed me to choose my first name. I gave them a selection, and they went with Vivian. So that also feeds me in a sense. But we have wonderful people, wonderful artists in Nicole Manick, who is our wardrobe designer, and the people who worked with me for my hair. Right now we have Simone Finch, who does my hair, and Roxanne Den Nobrega, who does my makeup. And I look in the mirror and I see what the collaboration has produced, and Vivian Holness comes from that place. Then you get the fantastic script, right? And I see how she thinks. And yeah, they make it still. I wouldn't say it's easy, right? Because even if we make it look easy, acting is never easy. But I will say that when you have great people surrounding you and kind people to tell you when you're not getting it right, I feel like I'm in good hands to offer up the best version of Vivian Holness that I can.
That's awesome.
Wow. Okay.
You mentioned you guys are working on season 2 and 3. So, Sudz,
Yeah.
what's the process like? Do you only work on season 2 first and then season 3? Is it kind of a back and forth and you decide where the episodes go? How does it work?
I mean, you could speak to that more, but how I was hired, I get hired for, hey, Sudz, you want to do this episode? Okay. Episode 204, for example. I'm like, okay, you're offering me work? Yeah, sure. It's like the year that we've had, the last 3 years, it's been horrible. So the fact that this was actually going last year during the SAG strike, during the writer's strike, was crazy because it was one of the few shows that was going last year. And then, so that opportunity came around. So I'm like, yeah, sure, put me in, coach. But in terms of season 2, season 3, I got hired to do 2 episodes of season 2, and then there's a season 3, and it's like, I think season 2 ends on Thursday and it starts on Friday. The season 3 starts on Friday. And so I'm going to do 302 as well. So it's just, there's a calendar, and then so these guys are going, they started in July and they're going until May. And then you guys have like a month off in January, I think. So that's how it works. You'll actually see Toronto in the winter. That's kind of odd, but yeah, you'll see Toronto in the winter. But that's how it's going from July to May. They're shooting season 2 and season 3 with a break, sort of like December. At some point in November, it goes to season 3.
Amy, do you want to talk a bit more about like the planning process? Are you working a whole season ahead, a few episodes ahead?
Yeah, so our writers started in the spring on season 2. Last year was nuts because we had a pilot that was delivered, and the only way that Dick Wolf has really been a part of this was that he got approval on the original script, because this, as Tex said, it was an original version of Law and Order that is the first one that's ever been done by someone other than Dick Wolf. So he got to read it and decide whether or not this was representative of his world. That's really the only way that he has weighed in thus far. But that happened. He read it. We found out on Thursday night that we were greenlit, that Dick liked it, and that we were greenlit, and then it was announced the following Monday. So we had about 4 days to try and wrap our heads around the fact that we were doing this and that we were going to be in production weeks later.
Yeah, and close the deal.
Yes. Yeah, no, it was insane. It was insane. However, this year we've had a bit more time. So we do work in chronological order in that it's episode 1, 2, 3 of the second season and then the third season. And that is primarily because we have to deliver. We still don't have an air date for season 2. We imagine it's probably going to be in January or February of 2025. So you don't have time to switch the episodes up, really. You can sort of do it by maybe one episode, switching episode 3 and 4, for example, or something like that. But we tend to stick with the order that we shoot in. And the writers' room really do a lot of work to make sure that we're finding scripts or episodes that not only do the crimes feel different. So some crimes there can be an intimate story, there's a bigger story, there's a political story, and we try to hit different parts of the community, different communities in Toronto. So we're not all shooting something in one neighborhood. Though we tend to like Ossington, but that's just because we live over there and it's easy to get to work. Sorry. So the writers do try to make sure that they're doing a good job of mixing up the different crime stories and vibes of the episodes. And we love to try and pair directors with specific stories when we know that it's something, like, for example, if there is going to be a story that has a sexual assault element to it, we would prefer to have a female director run with that episode. But we don't always land on that. And for me personally, that's sometimes the thing that's kind of fun. It's the special sauce to have somebody like I love when directors that aren't the first person that came to mind take on an episode that is sort of outside of what you've seen them do, and they just step up, and it's so exciting. So there's sort of a bit of magic that happens too in the schedule, because you book directors when they're available, and hope that the writers can deliver something that's going to speak to that director. I mean, we had a director in the first season, Dave Strayton, who was assigned the hockey episode, and this man has never watched a hockey game in his life, and he was horrified and like totally up for it, totally game, but he was horrified that he was doing he said as a joke to us, whatever you do, just don't give me the hockey episode. And sure enough, he got the hockey episode, but he did a great job with it. So it was sort of, it's that kind of thing that's kind of exciting to see unfold.
That's amazing. Now, Karen, obviously being on set, what's the behind the scenes look like? Has there been any memorable moments that have stuck out to you so far on set filming?
Why are you looking at? You just turned to me like, what you gonna say? Okay. The thing that actually rests with me is the camaraderie between all the actors in the green room, which we kind of share with all the furniture that they're not using on set at this point. It's a real mess, but it keeps us grounded. And in order to sort of, take the pressure off, especially for numbers 1 and 2, Kathleen and Aiden, who really carry every single one of these shows. I mean, the rest of us just show up and try not to fuck up because it's there, But yeah, to take the pressure off, they do things like they have root beer float taste tests, like blind taste tests back there. And it happens, I think, every Thursday, or sometimes, there's a whole thing about ordering in momos, or it always seems to have something to do with food, which I enjoy. Yeah, I find them funny and helpful and really real when they're exhausted, when there's something they can't figure out, and they're asking everyone to chime in to see if we can unravel the threads on something that is particularly, that is a nugget that they can't really unravel. Yes, it's that's the thing, is the collaboration between the actors and their certain crew members who are around there too, and we seem to have found a way to gel together and help each other through the process. And I remember, Amy, I think it was last season, when I said to you, kind of as a joke, did you have a point to not hire any assholes? And without missing a beat, she actually got really serious and she went, yes. And I thought to myself, oh, I get it. I get why there is a certain calm and joy that permeates this set. And it's because from the top, they decided that that's what they were going to purposefully try to do. And you did a pretty good job.
Yes, we have a no asshole policy. But one of my favorite behind the scene moments involves Karen, and it's always trying to figure out who is going to notice first that she's arrived on set in her Uggs and not her wardrobe shoes. And I cannot tell you how many times we've filmed her in her Uggs. And that is one of the, to watch the horror that slowly dawns on people's faces as Karen's walking into set with Uggs on and a beautiful outfit is pretty fun.
That's what, well, you can, if my feet are comfortable, you'll get the best performance out of me every time.
Comfort over beauty, am I right? I'm going to go across, and Karen, we'll start with you. What has been the feedback from the audiences, from the fans? Is there anything been on Twitter, anything you've seen that have stuck out to you that they've said about the show so far?
Well, Twitter and Instagram, and yes, people, I know from social media, obviously, that people really love the show. And I don't leave my house anymore without being recognized, and that's been going on for a while, and I'm absolutely fine with it because I realize that that's a part of it, and I'm grateful for it most of the time. But the thing that really rests with me is when TTC drivers, who usually are just I am here to take people from point A to point B, TTC drivers give me props. I'm like,
there you go.
We done good. When they're like, hey! And I am talking like brothers on Danforth Avenue, just standing in front of, it's some kind of supermarket, and I'm walking by. And, and they're like, wait a minute, I watch you. And brothers are hard to please, right? You really have to step up. And I think if they are proud of what we're doing, if they are proud of how we're representing Toronto and representing Canada, we done okay. So thank you, brothers, in particular. Thank you.
Sense anything?
Well, I mean, honestly, generally people, oh, you're a director, oh, what do you do? And then you say whatever you do, and they just look at you blankly. As you mention off Canadian series after Canadian series, they're like, yeah, and, then usually people if I say Murdoch, oh, Murdoch, they'll say that. But now it's Law and Order Toronto, Law and Order Toronto, yes! And so they're from people who are 8 years old to my dad's like 85 and he watches it. So it's like everybody in between. People actually watch this show. Yeah. And so like that's why you're getting recognized, because people watch this show. And it's something that like you can't force people, or you offer it to people. People actually tuned in, and people when it was on the run up to the promotion of the airing of the first episode, people were excited. I remember people talking about it. And people were taking and sharing stuff that I was putting on, and everybody was sharing stuff what Karen's putting on, Amy's putting on. It was like this crazy thing. It's like, oh, people are hyped about this, because the brand is such that we all know it. We all grew up watching it. We've seen all the episodes, but people have this built-in appetite for it. But the thing is, the quality is there, and the thing is, you see the talent pool in this city, in this country, and the talent of the actors here are phenomenal.
All the people that I came up with in theater, all the people that I looked up to, like Diego Matamoros, when he arrived on set, I was like, oh my God, it's Diego Matamoros, right? And I will say that I got really, really popular in my father's retirement home in Drumheller, Alberta. Like, seriously, guys, we are everywhere. You get to Drumheller, Alberta, we're everywhere.
Tex, anything you've heard on Twitter or just people reaching out about the show?
Well, I guess just playing a little bit to the friends and family aspect, I've never had so many friends and family message me directly wanting to be in a show, but also to play a dead body. Like, out of all the things, it's like, I'll just show up. I can be like really still. Like I could hold my breath for a really long time. It's like, what's going on? What are we doing?
But that's the thing, though, because you do have to because you'll have to tell whoever's the murder victim, okay, I gotta action. I go 3, 2, 1, take your last breath, and then I'll go action. But it's a thing, it's a skill, and one of the crazy things is that you won't notice this on screen, but your carotid artery, it still pulses. Yes. You can hold, but you're there, and you're perfectly still. But you'll see it like that because you're a human being and you can't control that. So you cannot control that. So we'll have we had a reporter from the Toronto Star, and it was so funny because she was super still, but you saw this boom, 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 and we're she's human. We cannot kill her for this. She's human. So you have to actually do a VFX shot, and you have to put V on a slate, and you got to actually freeze that. It's a special effect you got to do. So that's, and we don't have a lot of money for special effects on the show, but that's one of the things that we have to do.
Wow.
But dead bodies, to make it look, to get that illusion, it's a lot of stuff that's going into that.
I will say that was a topic discussion amongst me and my friends of which one of us could play a dead body on the show. When we all heard it was coming to Toronto, I'm like, why is this no topic of conversation? But it's a thing, so I'm sure those messages were very true. And what about yourself? Any family, friends, people reach out about the show?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild in the first season. The second season, I mean, I have a lot of people from my past who I've not spoken to in 20 years popping up to say hi, which is actually kind of lovely. I don't mind. I have a few enemies, but not that many, so I'm okay to talk to most of the people who get in touch. I think the thing that was most... two things. I'm very relieved that we've moved on to the second season, and now that everybody who I bump into who knows what I do no longer says dun dun every time they see me. So I'm glad that we've moved beyond that. Though that was super fun for the first 3 months. The second thing that I'm still paying the price for is, if you have watched the show and you hear the voice at the top of the show, that deep, deep voice, who, hot tip, was discovered because he is Dick Wolf's real estate agent with that voice. That's who that is. Fascinating, amazing voice. He sold him a home in Maine and then called him up one day and said, I have a gig for you. And he was like... in Law and Order. And he actually sounds that way. So I was in the sound booth and was directing him, and I'm not a director, but I was there talking about Toronto. And I hear that all the time. Why did you choose to say Toronto instead of Toronto? And it's because I say Toronto, because I had a mother who was super uptight about the fact that I had to say Toronto. So I apologize, but that's something I deal with quite a bit. I get a lot of flack from friends about Toronto versus Toronto. Yes, there you go.
That's amazing. Now, last question, we'll go across. Amy, we'll start with you. If you could finish the line, Law and Order Toronto, criminal intent is?
Law and Order Toronto, criminal intent is a crime-laden love letter to this city.
Okay, wow.
Law and Order Toronto is back this winter on City TV.
Law and Order Toronto is bad, you know, bad.
Oh my God. Okay. Law and Order Toronto is one of the best jobs I've ever had. And I've had a lot of really good jobs. And I thank my lucky stars for it every day.
Amazing, thank you. So I know we'll open the floor up to a Q&A. I think there might be a microphone in the audience. Yeah, they're just gonna pass it around. There's a question right over here in the front, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're more than welcome to yell it if you want before you.
I just want to say, show's amazing. Yeah, sure. Because it's so awesome, I've started watching the old show as well while I can't watch the next season yet. I just want to say I really enjoy the Sergeant. Like Anita Van Buren, that character was really super cool in the original series, and to be like this like powerful woman that's like telling her detectives like, well, just keep looking, or that kind of like that vibe of like knowledge that comes from like a really strong matriarch. I think that you're continuing that saga in a really, really nice that role in a wonderful way. One thing that I wanted to ask, I was so super surprised that Law and Order is like law and not so much order anymore. And when did that happen? Like, I just wanted, like, I don't know exactly. I think there's a lot of like in the climate of like CSI and all that stuff, it sticks on the detective work. But is there opportunities to go to the order part?
So we do have, this one is criminal intent. So criminal intent spends 10%, rather than going into the courtroom, we spend 10% of the show from the criminal's perspective. So we have what you call cutaways, we call cutaways, where you will be seeing the story unfold or pushed forward from one of the suspects or the criminal's perspective. And there were a couple of reasons why this was chosen for the Canadian version of the format. One, we don't have a ton of law shows in Canada because our lawyers still wear robes in the courtroom. And while it is cool for UK lawyers to wear robes and sell that around the world, Canadian lawyers wearing robes does not sell as easily around the world. So that is one of the considerations. And then apparently rumor has it, and keep it to yourself, but this is Dick Wolf's favorite format of the Law and Order franchise. He loves them all, but apparently criminal intent is, it's that Sherlock vibe, Sherlock and Watson vibe. So that was something, I think one of the main reasons why this was what was chosen. We do in season 2 go into the courtroom, which was super fun and very exciting to see Casey, who is our actor who plays our lawyer on the show, prosecutor on the show, to see him actually in robes and in the courtroom was a lot of fun. So you will have to come and watch season 2.
There's a question right behind you there.
Hi. Sorry, just for the purposes of the camera, can I get people to stand up if you are able to and have the capacity to?
I have the capacity to. Hi, yeah, I'm a huge fan of Law and Order, have been for decades, so I was very excited to see it come here. I am a writer and actor, and I'd like to know, how does one get involved in writing these things?
So my sister has a great phrase for what it's like to write this. It's like building a Swiss watch while having a stroke. This is her description of trying to write a Law and Order script, because there are so many different pieces to it. Generally, we do read samples. We need people who are members of WGC. We have, from the get-go, it is really important to us and to Lark to have built a Canadian show. We really, really wanted this to be a Canadian show. So to that end, we have WGC writers. We had, there was the strike on last year, but that was okay because we really wanted to make sure that we were working with Canadian actors who lived in Canada for the most part, and then directors who were Canadian directors. That is incredibly important to us. We do read people. Tassie does read people generally between seasons, not while she's writing. She has no extra time. And we're really easy to find. You can find us online very, very easily and send us a sample and reach out that way. We do try to look for people with procedural experience for across the board, from directors to writers, just because it is such a fast-moving train that we just need to. There are some principles to procedurals that are just, it's just helpful if you have that sort of understanding from the get-go. But that's not to say that we don't look at other people. We do, but generally between seasons. Does that sort of answer your question? Yeah.
Hi. So I have a twofold question. One is, first of all, thank you, because I won a bet. Just for seeing Law and Order Toronto on my screen, I won a 17-year-long bet with my husband where he says,
awesome.
Yeah, he saw an ad that says on the mean streets of Toronto, and he goes, what mean streets of Toronto? Toronto is a safe place. Go try Baltimore, then you know it. I'm like, so you see, we are deserving of a crime TV show. Anyway, so I won that bet. So the first part of the question is, are the stories that are amazing? I first saw one of the names on the cast list was Ali Kazmi, and I thought it was Ali Kazemi, who is my professor at York University, and I was like, he's on this show? And I watched it 3 times. I was like, did I miss something? He's not on the show. Then I looked at the name again, it wasn't Ali Kazemi. Sorry, that's the second one. Well, my question is, are the stories reflective of the crimes in Toronto? And then also, do you intend to kind of spin it off to the Special Victims Unit 1? That's it.
So I guess when it comes to the stories that are picked for the show, there's a headline that sort of inspires a concept, but these are wholly original stories that are baked in that writer's room. So the idea is that you're wanting to engage an audience in some familiarity with the types of crimes that are happening in our country or in our city, but doing it in a completely fictional way. And so really, it gives you flexibility to do whatever you want, really. To a certain regard. SVU? No comment.
What?
And
I am game for a mashup. Let me tell you.
I was just saying, there's no conversations that are happening about that right now.
There is.
But maybe there will be.
There is a desire to see some sort of crossover for sure from all parties, but it is a very, very challenging thing to try and do, especially with the schedules of different people and things like that. So it is something that we have had conversations about. It'd be super fun to do, but
To be clear,
Not-
we get to go to New York, right? just okay. Just putting that out there.
Toronto is cheaper.
We have our last question just over here.
Well, I just had a compliment and a question. The compliment was last month I got to act on your show, and I just want to reflect back on you, what I went through, which was very unique. One thing is that Peter, the director, reached out to me in advance. Most shows, you meet the director on the day, which is fine, but to actually have somebody come to you in advance, and I actually had a question/quibble about one of my lines, and we got to go back and forth about that. He cleared it with Seneca, the writer. Seneca was on set the day I was there. He thanked me for that, pointing that out. You know, so it was really, you got to feel like you were collaborating and not just a hired, you know, body. The other thing was, and this is a spoiler alert, so everybody's sworn to secrecy, but I do take a beating on your show. And working with John Stead, who is your stunt coordinator, I mean, it was incredible because he was telling the story through this stunt fight that we had. The other thing is, every time I've been doubled in the past for stunts, it's a white guy painted brown, and you had a South Asian stunt person doubling me. He's much younger and fitter than I am, so if you have to match me in the computer with him, go right ahead. So it was a great experience. But here's the question. Crime shows are a dime a dozen, and there's something about Law and Order, all the Law and Orders, but in particular Law and Order Criminal Intent Toronto, that you automatically know you're watching Law and Order when you're watching it. You're not watching Criminal Minds, you're not watching Homicide, you're not watching anything else. Do you know what that is and why that is? Because I know that there's lots of people in this room who wish they were making or creating their own crime show, and if there was a way to bottle that, it would be good, because there's something specific about Law and Orders, all of them, but particularly the Toronto one, that if you know what that is, let us know.
That is an excellent question. And I was just editing your episode last week. You did a good job. It was fun. It's a fun episode. It is something that we really, we talked about a ton in the first season. What makes this different? How do we get that Law and Order tone? What do we do to try and make sure that we're not out? I mean, it was one of the most terrifying things in the world to deliver our first cut, and hope to God that it was close. And I think there's probably a combination. I'd be curious too to ask the rest of you the same question. I think it is a combo of moving through the story at a certain speed. So we move very quickly through a lot of story. I think it is the music, which you almost don't even notice sometimes when you're watching Law and Order, but I think that as soon, like I can watch a cut without the music and think, oh, how's this gonna, and then as soon as the music's in there, that certain tone, even if it is just something that's helping propel us through it, that sort of sets me into the world of Law and Order. It weirdly is not the dun-dun, which is funny because that dun-dun was something that we've really struggled with. The dun-dun small thing should never be used as a punctuation to the previous scene. It is always an introduction to the scene that is about to come. So if you ever find in a cut, when I've been cutting it, you never, there's such an impulse to end the scene and then dun-dun. And that is in fact incorrect. You have to have the scene end. The dun-dun is an intro. I don't know, what would you, I wish I had a better answer. That's a great question.
There's an element of humanity as well that I think this format has that really resonates with audiences. It's not just breaking down doors and pulling out a gun. There's there's a humanity there that dives deep, and I think that's really a key component as well.
I think it's a lot of different things. It's like when people used to ask, what's the Motown sound? You know, and it was like, it's a lot of different things. And I think that, you know, your time on set, so just like when, like a lot of directors now, and it's like one of the things that we try to do on the show is call ahead, because we don't have time on set. We don't have time to greet. Like we have to, like, you gotta know I'm your friend. Like the media, you're off book when you hit set. We'll give you the lay of the land in a phone call or an email at least, but that's generally we try to do that. Like every director tries to do that. Because once your deal is closed, we get your numbers, we get your information, then we try to talk to you. Because it's really important that you all know that you got a friend in us, and that we're on set and we're hitting the ground running, and we probably only have 3 or 4 takes, but we got to go because we have so much stuff to do. And so I think that these scenes are shot like pretty quickly, to be honest. There's not like a languorous, you know, we've got to like move it. We got to keep it moving. But also there has to be some catharsis. The 2 leads and our boss here, they are the victims' advocates. They want to see justice served. So there is like, you know, this format has been criticized, Law & Order has been criticized being propaganda. And we're not trying to make propaganda here. Our cops are not just black and white, they're gray. So there's a lot going on here, but I think that like ultimately you're asking for that distillation of what a Law & Order episode is, and I think that we're always trying to strive for that. I'm trying to strive for that in working with the actors and locations on set, but also in the edit room, because you've got to make sure that there is some emotional catharsis at the end in what we call the aria. Where our cops are coming and giving their theory of the case and also convincing that person to confess or cornering that person. It's very important that all of those things are being externalized. It doesn't work if it's internal. It doesn't work if it's internal. It has to be externalized. So those are some of the things that we, again, it's a constant learning, I think. And we're all, you know, as artists, we're all open to that. I learn a lot every day I'm on set, I learn. And I think that everybody coming in, we really try to make it a safe space for you to soar when you're on set. And I'm really happy to hear that, Sudz, that you had a great experience, because that's what we all try to do. That's what we all strive to do.
And I think there's something to be said for, 3 decades, 3+ decades of a template being tried and tested, and learning from mistakes and figuring out how we pay homage to this template, but also make it uniquely Canadian. And the fact, for me, that there is such intention put behind showing Toronto in all our colors, and I mean that literally and figuratively. I think that I think that gives it a verity, that gives it a reality that not only means so much to us, but I think also translates to the people who don't live in Toronto and the people even outside of Canada who happen to be able to see the show, like my family in Jamaica can watch the show. So I think that reads that we are really trying to show Toronto in all its beauty, in all its complexity, in all its dirtiness. We're going to see it in the middle of the wintertime now. It ain't going to be pretty. You know, that I think pays huge dividends. We're real.
Well, let's put our hands together and thank our incredible panelists today. Thank you so much for joining us, and that'll wrap up our panel for today. Thank you.
Thank you.